Have you ever seen a comment on Twitter repeated again and again in threads? Or an account with a random name followed by 6 numbers responding to a political figure? Well, these could be internet bots, and they might be trying to influence you.
It basically means some kind of output or content on social media which has been generated at least partly automatically. So it could be something that's the result of some kind of computer program or piece of software that's generating multiple postings of the same content, or it could be content. There's a kind of spectrum, if you like. It could be more of a kind of human-machine collaboration where a human is putting out multiple, in a sort of quasi-automated way, is putting out multiple pieces of content. But basically doing it at a rate that a human being probably couldn't manage.
Very often, because the bots are being automatically created, then they tend to use Twitter handles that are similar to the sort of passwords that are automatically generated for our bank accounts and so on. So it's you can see if someone's got a Twitter handle that is 15 characters, different letters, numbers, and exclamation marks, the chances are that is actually an automatically generated account. So one should be highly suspicious of messages coming from that particular account. So there are telltale signs that people can look for and then can dismiss information from that source.
It's difficult to know how much influence bots have had in elections around the world, but it's clear they exist. Renaud Lambiot is a professor at the Mathematical Institute at Oxford University. He helped put together a report looking into the impact of bots in previous UK elections.
We've not been the first ones to observe bots in elections. This is something that people have been observing, for instance, during the Brexit referendum, for instance, in the UK, but also in the US elections, in many or in other countries as well. And what the people have been observing before was the possibility for these automated accounts basically to, at least to try to influence an election. And I don't mean to say that the bots are voting themselves, obviously not, right? But what they can do is sometimes to enhance the polarization that you observe in social media. We know that, there is more and more polarization online, even if initially social networks look to be like an ideal place where the people would be communicating with each other. Well, it's not the case, right? It tends to divide the people who don't agree with each other. And one possibility is that the bots basically enhance this separation between people having different opinions. But also they can be used to provide some importance, or they can help to validate certain people just by enhancing the number of votes or tweets or likes that they do have on social media.
How much impact does it have? That's the really important question. You take all the misinformation that there is out there, which misinformation is actually making a difference, which is affecting your belief in what is true and what isn't true, and do you act on it? And these are the really important questions to ask. So I think we have started to know quite a lot of how much this stuff there is, but we're only at the beginnings of knowing what sort of impact it has on our political views.
But where are these bots coming from, and why?
The evidence seems to point to Eastern Europe as being the principal source, certainly for many of the bots and sort of organised Facebook groups that are targeting the US and indeed the UK. And their purpose sometimes is to back a particular candidate who they see as being preferable to the alternative. But sometimes what they're doing is simply sowing dissent or creating confusion. And there's been evidence of that, for instance, around vaccines, where they see it as their interests to create uncertainty, to create dissent, to challenge some of the fundamental principles of the way that we operate as a country. They see a political advantage in that.
In 2019, shortly before the December election, the government delayed the release of the Russia Report, a report looking into Russian interference in UK elections. When eventually released, the report found that the government had not seen or sought evidence of successful interference in UK democratic processes and had made no serious effort to do so.
What is of interest, of course, is that since that report, the government have indicated that they thought perhaps there was involvement in 2019, but in this case it was in relation to support that might have gone to Jeremy Corbyn's campaign. So whilst they've been willing to express a view on the 2019 election, when it comes to 2016 and the extent to which there might have been Russian bot involvement, the government are not willing to look at that. They say, well, there's no evidence that there was. The only problem with that is that no one in the intelligence and security family was asked to look for any evidence.
So while the government has been slow to combat election bots, is it up to social media companies to do more?
I think the figures for 1/4 of accounts that were blocked by Facebook was like 582 million accounts.
Do you think that social media companies do bear kind of some responsibility, if not all, but some responsibility for dealing with these bots?
Totally, vitally important. The social media companies up their game, and for ages they sort of said they couldn't, although they already were. But they kind of vastly understated the amount that they could do, and they are innovating more in that area now.
There's a government responsibility, and of course at the moment the government are bringing in the online harms bill, which is going to tackle some issues around abuse, for instance, that people receive online, but there is also the potential there for them to tackle some of these democratic abuses. And it's not entirely clear at present the extent to which the government will be, under the guise of free speech, perhaps allowing what they're calling democratic content to get through, which is in fact disinformation. So that's going to be an area that in that particular bill that will need to be watched very closely.